AITA for canceling my wedding after my fiancé's backup guy sat at our rehearsal dinner? My name is Hugh. I am 33, and up until last month, I was supposed to be getting married to Meredith, the woman I had been with for 4 years. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I work in commercial insurance. It is exactly as exciting as it sounds, but it is stable, it pays the bills, and it made me the kind of person everyone trusted to handle the grown-up stuff. I am the guy who keeps receipts in labeled folders, changes the air filter before it turns gray, and leaves 15 minutes early because traffic is not a personality test. Meredith used to say that was what made her feel safe with me. Looking back, I think safe was the word I should have paid more attention to. Meredith was 31, sharp, funny, and polished in a way I never learned to be. She worked in marketing for a boutique hospitality group, so she could look at a blank room and see lighting, florals, napkin folds, and the exact kind of music that would make people say, "This is so Meredith." She was good at making things feel intentional. That was how our wedding planning worked, too. She handled the look and the mood. I handled the contracts, deposits, spreadsheets, and vendor emails. We had a shared wedding email account because Meredith said she didn't want important messages disappearing into our personal inboxes. I thought that was smart. I made folders for the venue, photographer, catering, florist, hotel block, honeymoon, and rehearsal dinner. The wedding was supposed to be at a small brewery event space connected to an upscale southern restaurant near downtown Nashville. Exposed brick, warm lights, polished wood floors, the kind of place where every menu item came with either bourbon, pimento cheese, or both. The ceremony space was beautiful, and Meredith loved it immediately. I signed the event agreement because my credit card had the higher limit and the venue needed a card on file for the deposit and final balance. That became the pattern. Photographer retainer on my card. Catering deposit through my account. Honeymoon booking on my travel profile. The florist was split, but the final balance was still unpaid. Meredith was paying off student loans and sometimes helping her younger sister, so I didn't make a big thing of it. It never felt like I was buying a wedding. It felt like I was investing in our future. There were little comments over the years that I brushed off because they came wrapped in smiles. Meredith's friends would say things like, "Hugh is your safe era," or "Look at you, choosing peace instead of chaos." Meredith would laugh and lean into me. I got lucky before I did something dramatic. I took it as a compliment. I thought it meant I was steady. I thought it meant I was the person she trusted after years of dating men who made her anxious. Sometimes her maid of honor, Lila, would make jokes that felt a little sharper than necessary. Lila had been Meredith's best friend since college and had the kind of confidence that made people mistake harshness for honesty. Once, during a brunch at our apartment, Lila looked around at my labeled bins of wedding decorations in the spare room and said, "Thank goodness Meredith found someone with health insurance and a label maker." Meredith laughed so hard she had to cover her mouth. I smiled because everyone else did. I told myself I was being too sensitive. I am not the guy who causes a scene. I am the guy who reads cancellation clauses before signing anything. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was searching the shared wedding email for the florist balance. The florist had sent a final invoice, and I needed the due date because Meredith had Venmo requested me for a few smaller things, and I was trying to keep everything clean before the final payments hit. I typed florist balance into the search bar, and a thread popped up that I didn't recognize. It had been archived, not deleted. The subject line was colors and songs, and it had been forwarded from Meredith's personal email to the wedding account. At first, it looked harmless. Meredith had sent herself notes from a man named Graham. I knew the name vaguely. She had mentioned him as an old family friend, someone who had grown up around her family and showed up at holidays sometimes. I had met him once for maybe 5 minutes at her parents' 4th of July cookout. He had a relaxed smile, expensive sneakers, and the easy confidence of someone who never had to ask whether he belonged. The thread had Graham commenting on wedding colors. "Soft green is more you than that dusty blue," he wrote. "Dusty blue feels like you're pretending to be someone's tasteful aunt." Meredith had replied, "This is why I need your judgment." I frowned at that, but it wasn't a major issue. People ask friends for wedding opinions. Then I saw a playlist link. Graham had written, "If you use that song, I'm going to laugh because it is very on the nose." Meredith replied, "Too on the nose for a first dance." My stomach tightened. The song was one Meredith and I had picked together on a Sunday night in our kitchen while we ate takeout noodles out of paper cartons. She had made a big deal about it being ours. She had put her phone on the counter, played 3 options, and then rested her chin on my shoulder when the final one came on. This one, she had said. This feels like us. Apparently, us had gone out for review. I kept scrolling. Graham had notes about the honeymoon, too. Not vague ones. Specific ones. The Charleston Hotel with the courtyard is more your speed, he wrote. Savannah is pretty, but don't let Hugh overschedule it. You hate vacation itineraries that feel like homework. I sat at my desk staring at the screen while the office air conditioner hummed above me. The honeymoon was supposed to be 5 nights split between Charleston and Savannah. I had booked it through my travel card because I had points. Meredith and I had argued once, quietly, about the itinerary. I like reservations. She likes wandering. We had settled on one planned dinner in Charleston, one walking tour in Savannah, and free time around both. I had not told Graham any of that. That night, while Meredith stood at the stove making boxed pasta and stirring sauce from a jar, I asked, as casually as I could, "Hey, is Graham coming to the rehearsal dinner?" She didn't turn around right away. "I think so," she said. "Why?" "I saw his name in some wedding emails. I didn't realize he was that involved." She made a small face, like I had said something embarrassing. "He's not involved. He just knows me really well. He grew up with us. He's basically like family." "Basically like family how?" She laughed, but it came out too quick. "Like a cousin, but not weird." That didn't clarify as much as you think it did. She turned down the burner and looked at me. He's not a concern. He knows me too well to be an issue." I wish I had heard that sentence more clearly at the time. Instead, I nodded. I wanted to be fair. We were 2 weeks out from the wedding. Everyone was stressed. The apartment was full of boxes, place cards, favors, extra candles, and a garment bag hanging from the bedroom door like a silent countdown. I didn't want to become the jealous fiancé who turned an old friend into the bad guy because wedding planning had made him insecure. But I didn't forget the email. The next morning, before work, I logged back into the shared account and searched Graham's name. More archived messages came up. Some were old jokes. Some were screenshots Meredith had forwarded to herself. Some were links to songs and restaurants. Some were more concerning. In one thread, Meredith wrote, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm making the adult choice or the choice I'm supposed to make." Graham replied, "Adult choices are overrated, but I get why Hugh makes sense." Hugh makes sense. Not Hugh makes you happy. Not Hugh loves you. Not you love Hugh. Hugh makes sense. Then I found the one that made my hands go cold. Meredith had written, "You know you're still my emergency exit, right?" Graham replied, "Always on standby." Meredith sent back a laughing emoji and a heart. I sat very still at our small kitchen table with my coffee going cold beside my laptop. Outside, someone's dog was barking from one of the balconies across the courtyard. Meredith was still asleep. The apartment looked normal. Her sneakers by the door. My keys in the ceramic dish. A half-built box of wedding favors on the dining table. I wanted to walk into the bedroom and wake her up with the laptop in my hands. I wanted to ask her what kind of person tells another man he is her emergency exit while I am paying deposits and writing guest names on envelopes. But I didn't, because I could already hear how it would go. It was a joke. "You're taking it wrong. Graham and I have always talked like that. Why were you digging?" So I did what I do for a living. I documented risk. I took screenshots. I saved copies to a folder she couldn't access. I checked every wedding contract and cancellation clause. I confirmed which agreements were in my name and which balances were scheduled. I looked at the venue terms, the photographer retainer, the catering deadline, the hotel block, and the honeymoon policy. I wasn't planning to get even. I was trying to understand how trapped I was if the thing I was afraid of turned out to be real. And still, some foolish part of me hoped it wasn't real. I told myself Meredith might set a boundary when it mattered. Maybe Graham was more attached to her than she was to him. Maybe she liked attention but would protect me in public. Maybe the messages were inappropriate but old habits, not a present reality. Then came the rehearsal dinner. It was the night before the wedding, in a private dining room above the restaurant connected to the brewery event space. The room had exposed brick, framed black and white photos of old Nashville streets, and pendant lights that made everyone look warmer than they were. A chalkboard sign by the bar said, "Almost Married," in white cursive. There were place cards, little menus tucked into folded napkins, pimento cheese appetizers, shrimp and grits, bourbon glazed salmon, and a minimum spend I had already put a deposit toward. Everything looked exactly like Meredith wanted. That made it worse. She looked beautiful that night in a cream-colored dress, her hair pinned back loosely, gold earrings moving when she turned her head. She squeezed my arm when we walked in and whispered, "We're almost there." For a second, I wanted to let myself believe that was enough. Then I saw Graham. He was seated closer to Meredith's parents than some of her actual relatives. He wasn't tucked away with distant friends. His place card was 3 seats down from Denise, Meredith's mother. Paul, her father, clapped him on the shoulder like he was part of the family. Meredith brought me over. You remember Graham. Graham stood and gave me a handshake that lasted half a second too long. "So you're the famous Hugh," he said. "I guess so." The guy who finally got her to settle down. A few people nearby laughed like he had said something sweet. I looked at Meredith. She smiled, but there was a tightness around her eyes. "Graham," she said lightly. "Be normal." He held up both hands. "I'm being very normal." Dinner started fine. Too fine. People complimented the flowers. Someone asked about the ceremony timing. Paul gave a short toast about family and patience. My best man, Marcus, sat across from me and kept catching my eye whenever Meredith's friends got loud. Marcus knew me well enough to know when I was quiet because I was enjoying myself, and when I was quiet because I was taking inventory. Lila had already finished a couple of drinks by the time she stood up for her toast. She tapped her glass with a fork and said, "Okay, I promise not to make this too embarrassing." Meredith groaned. "That means it's going to be terrible." "Only emotionally," Lila said, and everyone laughed. At first, it was normal maid of honor material. College stories. Bad apartments. Meredith once crying over a broken curling iron before a formal. Meredith making vision boards. Meredith refusing to date men who wore flip-flops anywhere but a pool. Then Lila's smile shifted. If you know Meredith, you know she has never met a plan B she didn't keep emotionally hydrated. There was a burst of laughter from her side of the table. I smiled politely because I didn't understand yet. Lila kept going. Some girls keep emergency flats in their purse. Meredith keeps an emotionally available man in storage. Meredith covered her face with one hand, laughing. "Stop. You're bad." Lila pointed down the table. "Don't worry, Graham knows his assignment. Backup groom stays ready." The room laughed too fast. That was what hit me first. Not the words. The speed. It wasn't surprise laughter. It was familiar laughter. The kind people give a joke they have heard before and still enjoy because it confirms something they all know. My mouth went dry. Graham lifted his drink. "I'm just here in case the insurance guy fails inspection." That got an even bigger laugh. I looked at Meredith. She wasn't horrified. She wasn't angry. She was blushing and smiling into her glass like she had been flattered in a way she knew she should pretend to dislike. Denise leaned toward me from a few seats down and patted the air with her hand. "Oh, honey, that's been a joke forever. Graham's been her safety net since high school." Paul laughed awkwardly and reached for his water. A safety net. The word sat there between the appetizers and the salmon like another place setting. I felt the whole room watching me, waiting to see whether I would be cool enough to take it. There is a particular kind of southern politeness that turns disrespect into a joke as long as everyone smiles hard enough. If you object, suddenly you're the one who made it uncomfortable. So I didn't object. Not yet. I picked up my water and took a sip. Marcus looked at me from across the table. His expression had changed. Graham apparently took my silence as permission. He leaned back in his chair and said, "Relax, man. I've been on standby for years. Comes with the territory." Lila laughed. "See? He gets it." I set my glass down carefully. Then Graham said, "You two are doing Charleston and Savannah, right?" Meredith always wanted that Courtyard Hotel in Charleston. My pulse thudded once in my ears. Meredith glanced at him. "Graham." "What?" "It's a good hotel." He looked at me. "The Battery place, right? Great choice. Just don't schedule every hour. She'll be upset by day 2. Nobody laughed as loudly at that one, but a few people smiled. I looked at Meredith again. She didn't say, "How do you know that?" She didn't say, "That's private." She gave me a small, pleading look, like she was asking me not to make it a problem. That was when the first dance came up. Lila was still talking, now drifting into how Meredith had always been dramatic about music. Someone asked what song we had picked. Meredith opened her mouth, but Graham beat her to it. "Oh, it's that one by the National, right?" he said. I knew she'd pick that. Very Meredith. He named the exact song. I felt something in me go completely still. That song had not been on the invitation. It was not in the ceremony program. It was not public information. It had been a private decision in our kitchen, or at least I had thought so. For the first time all night, I stopped asking whether I was being sensitive and started asking why nobody was surprised. Marcus leaned across the table slightly. "You okay?" I nodded once, but I wasn't okay. I was watching the room like evidence. Lila looked entertained. Denise looked indulgent. Paul looked uncomfortable, but committed to staying silent. Graham looked relaxed, almost pleased. Meredith looked nervous, but not guilty enough to stop anything. I stood and said quietly to Meredith, "Can I talk to you for a second?" Her smile froze. "Now?" "Yes." We stepped into the hallway near the stairs, where the noise from the dining room dropped to a muffled hum. A server passed carrying plates, looked at our faces, and quickly looked away. I kept my voice low. "Why does Graham know our honeymoon hotel?" She crossed her arms. "Can you please not do this tonight? I'm asking one question. He knows because I told him. He knows me. He helped me think through some things. Our honeymoon. It was just hotel opinions. Our first dance song." She looked toward the dining room door. "You. Everyone is already stressed. Lila had a few too many drinks. Graham jokes. That's what he does. I'm not asking why people laughed. I'm asking why he knew things only we were supposed to know." Her jaw tightened. "Because he's part of my life. He's part of my family. I'm marrying you tomorrow. Why isn't that enough?" There it was. Not an apology. Not a boundary. A demand that I accept the ceremony as proof, while she kept the other door open. I thought of the message again. "You know you're still my emergency exit, right?" That was when I understood the rehearsal dinner wasn't where I found out. It was where she confirmed it. I looked at her standing under the warm hallway light, still beautiful, still my fiancée for the moment, and felt a kind of sadness so clean it almost felt calm. "You had a chance to shut it down," I said. She blinked. "What?" "At the table. You had a chance to make it clear I wasn't the joke. You're making this bigger than it is." "No," I said. "I think everyone else already knew how big it was." I walked back into the private room. The table quieted in pieces. First Marcus, then Lila, then Denise. Graham still had that half-smile on his face, but it faded a little when he saw mine. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse Meredith of being unfaithful. I didn't make a scene or ask Graham if he wanted to take my place so badly. I had imagined 12 messy versions of that moment in the 2 weeks after I found the emails, and none of them ended with me respecting myself more. I stood behind my chair and placed my napkin beside my plate. "I appreciate everyone helping me understand my role here," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I thought I was the groom. Apparently, I was the funding source with a seat assignment. The silence that followed was immediate and complete. Meredith whispered, "Hugh." I looked at Denise and Paul. "Thank you for dinner." Then I looked at Marcus. "I'm leaving." He stood up without hesitation. Behind me, chairs scraped. Meredith said my name again. Lila said, "Oh my goodness, it was a joke." Someone else muttered, "Don't be dramatic." Graham didn't say anything. I walked out before they could turn my pain into a scene. I didn't fall apart until I got outside and the restaurant door closed behind me. The sidewalk air was humid. Music from Broadway drifted faintly between buildings, mixed with traffic and people laughing somewhere down the block. My hands started shaking so badly I had to lean against the brick wall near the side entrance. Marcus came out a few seconds later. He didn't ask a pointless question. He just stood beside me and said, "You don't have to decide everything tonight. But you also don't have to walk back into that room and pretend you didn't hear what you heard." My phone started buzzing. Meredith calling. Then Meredith texting. "Where are you? Please come back inside. You embarrassed me. This is unreasonable." Marcus looked at the screen and then at me. "Do you want me to drive?" I nodded. I didn't trust myself behind the wheel yet. He drove me to a hotel near his place. I checked in with a clerk who politely pretended not to notice that I was wearing rehearsal dinner clothes and looked like I was going through a rough time. Upstairs, in a room with beige walls and a view of a parking garage, I opened my laptop. The messages looked worse after that dinner because now I could hear the laughter behind them. Sometimes I wonder if I'm making the adult choice. Songs I'd use if things were different. "You know you're still my emergency exit, right? Always on standby." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and read them again, not because I needed more pain, but because I needed to stop trying to rescue her from what she had written. Around midnight, Marcus brought me a paper bag with a turkey sandwich, chips, and a bottle of water from a gas station. I hadn't eaten since the pimento cheese appetizer. He sat in the room's little chair while I reviewed contracts. "You don't have to do this tonight," he said. "Yes, I do." "Okay." He opened the chips and set them beside me. "Then do it clean." That helped more than any angry outburst would have. The venue agreement said the retainer was non-refundable, but the final payment could still be stopped if cancellation notice was given before the event. The card on file was mine. The catering balance was scheduled for the morning. The photographer would keep the retainer but cancel the remaining balance. The florist balance had not been paid yet. The honeymoon booking was complicated but not hopeless. I could get a partial travel credit, not a full refund. It was going to cost me money. A lot of money. But not as much as marrying someone who had made room for my replacement before we even said vows. The next morning, my phone looked like a slot machine of panic. Meredith had called 23 times. There were voice notes I didn't play. Texts came in waves. "You're blowing up our life over some inappropriate jokes. My parents are asking what to tell people. You can't cancel everything without talking to me. Graham has nothing to do with us. Please answer your phone. Hugh, this is cruel." The first thing she focused on was not what I had heard. It was what people would think. At 7:12 a.m., I called the venue coordinator, Bethany. Her voice was professional in the way of someone who had seen wedding disasters before breakfast. "This is Hugh," I said. "I'm calling about the event scheduled for today under Hugh and Meredith." There was a tiny pause. "Yes, Hugh. How can I help?" "I need to cancel the wedding." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm sorry to hear that. I understand the retainer is non-refundable. I need to stop any additional charges to my card and confirm that no event can proceed under my contract without my authorization." That sentence sounded cold, but my hands were shaking again. Bethany pulled up the file. I could hear her keyboard. "The signed event agreement is under your name, and the card on file ends in 4421. The final balance has not been processed yet. If you're canceling, I can send a cancellation acknowledgement. The private dining room minimum from last night is separate and already settled." "Thank you." She lowered her voice slightly. "I'll send it in writing." The photographer was next, then catering, then the florist, then the travel booking line, where I spent 40 minutes listening to hold music that sounded overly cheerful. I lost retainers. I lost fees. I got a partial credit for the honeymoon I no longer wanted. I stopped the larger payments from going through. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was refusing to finance my own humiliation. At 9:03 a.m., I sent Meredith one email. "Meredith, I'm canceling the wedding. Last night confirmed what I had already suspected. I won't marry someone who keeps another man as an emergency exit while letting her family laugh at me for not knowing." Attached are the messages I saved. "Please do not come to my hotel. We can coordinate the apartment, shared bills, and remaining property in writing. Hugh." I attached the screenshots. The emergency exit message, the adult choice message, the playlist, the honeymoon thread. Then I sent it before I could edit it into something softer. Her response came 11 minutes later. "You went through my emails?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was exactly the move I expected. I replied once. It was our shared wedding email. "Please keep communication in writing." Then Denise called. I let it ring once, then answered because I wanted to hear how much she knew. "Hugh," she said, in the voice she usually used when a waiter got her order wrong, but she wanted credit for being polite. "I am disappointed in how you chose to handle this." "Good morning, Denise. A lot of people came a long way to celebrate you both. We have relatives who flew in from out of state. There are hotel rooms under the wedding block. There were better ways to handle hurt feelings." "Hurt feelings," I repeated. "You know what I mean. Did you know people called Graham her backup before last night?" She went quiet for exactly 2 seconds too long. "That was an old joke," she said. "Did you know she called him her emergency exit?" This time the silence was longer. "I don't know what Meredith says privately to old friends. But you knew enough to tell me he had been her safety net since high school." Her tone cooled. "Hugh, a decent man would not humiliate a bride on her wedding day. A decent family wouldn't laugh at the groom for being the last one to know." She inhaled sharply. "I hope when you calm down, you understand what you've done." "I do understand," I said. That's why I did it. I ended the call. A few minutes later, Graham texted me. I don't know how he got my number. Maybe Meredith. Maybe the family group chat. Maybe he had always had it, and I had never mattered enough to know. Man, you're overreacting. Meredith needs someone emotionally mature right now, not someone punishing her because he can't take a joke. I took a screenshot. Then I blocked him. That was the easiest block of my life. By noon, the story was moving faster than I was. Meredith told some people I had abandoned her over a toast made after a few drinks. Lila texted me that I had ruined Meredith's life over a joke, and that every bride gets cold feet. I did not respond. I didn't make a public post. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't write a dramatic Facebook statement for people I hadn't seen since college. But when my sister asked what happened, I sent her the screenshots. When two groomsmen texted Marcus asking if I had lost my mind, Marcus asked my permission and then sent them the evidence. When one of Meredith's cousins messaged me, kindly, saying people were confused and worried, I replied with a short version and the screenshots that directly proved it. I didn't need strangers to vote on my pain. I just needed the people being lied to not hear only her version. The wedding day itself felt unreal. At 4 p.m., when I was supposed to be standing under flowers I paid for, I was eating pancakes in a booth with Marcus at a diner off Charlotte Pike. I had ordered breakfast because I couldn't think of a normal lunch. Marcus sat across from me, occasionally checking his phone but not reading me every update because he knew I couldn't take it. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from Meredith. I stared at it for a long time. You don't have to play it, Marcus said. I know. I didn't play it until that night. When I finally did, it was 2 minutes of crying, anger, and panic braided together. How could you do this to me today? Do you know how embarrassing this is? My aunt flew in from Denver. My parents don't know what to say. I know the Graham stuff looked bad, but it wasn't real. It was just a thing. You were the one I was marrying. Doesn't that count for anything? I listened once. Then I saved it and didn't reply. Over the next 30 days, I moved out of the apartment. That was worse in smaller ways. The big dramatic part had already happened. What remained were cardboard boxes, shared bills, awkward elevator rides, and the quiet harshness of dividing a life that had looked settled from the outside. I went back with Marcus and my sister to pack. Meredith was there the first day, sitting on the couch in sweatpants, eyes swollen, hair in a messy bun. The spare room was still full of wedding bins. Candles, table numbers, guest favors, a box of cocktail napkins with our initials stamped in gold. She watched me tape a box of books. Can we talk without evidence between us? She asked. I didn't look up right away. The evidence isn't between us, I said. Your choices are. She flinched like I had raised my voice, even though I hadn't. I never crossed that physical line with him, she said. I didn't say you did. Then why are you treating me like I was unfaithful? I set the tape down. Because you let another man be emotionally placed in my seat while I was still sitting in it. Her eyes filled again. That's not fair. No, I said. It wasn't. After that, most communication happened by email. Rent, utilities, security deposit, furniture. I paid what I owed and nothing more. She asked 2 times if I would cover part of the remaining vendor losses because, according to her, I had made the decision unilaterally. I sent back copies of the contracts and the payments I had already lost. She stopped asking. From what I heard, Meredith and Graham did not ride off into some grand romantic sunset. Once the wedding was gone, once the deposits were gone, once her family had to explain to relatives why the ceremony vanished overnight, the fantasy lost its shine. It is one thing to be the charming almost choice when another man is paying for the life. It is another thing to be asked to step into the wreckage with an actual checkbook. Graham disappeared from the story faster than I expected. Lila blocked me after one last message that said, I hope proving your point was worth it. It was not about proving a point. I lost money. I lost a relationship I had built my days around. I lost the version of Meredith I thought I knew. For a while, I also lost the simple comfort of trusting my own judgment. There were mornings I woke up in my new apartment, reached for my phone, and had to remember that there was no wedding, no honeymoon, no wife, no shared calendar full of plans. But I did not lose years pretending not to notice that every holiday table had a ghost chair reserved for another man. Meredith's family wanted me to believe the wrong thing was canceling the wedding. I think the wrong thing was expecting me to stand there in a suit, in front of everyone we knew, and make vows to someone who had already joked about her exit route. In the end, I didn't cancel a wedding because I was jealous. I canceled it because I finally understood I was being asked to marry someone who had already made room for my replacement. Being calm does not mean accepting disrespect. Being dependable does not mean being disposable. And quiet control is not about hurting someone else. Sometimes it is just refusing to keep paying for the version of your life where you are the joke. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.